Hey guys, still here and welcome back to ICBM for another mod highlight. Today I am checking out the Naval Airbase and ASW Aircraft mod, again by Tarsus. Now, what does this mod do? Pretty much exactly what you would expect from it based on what it says on the tin. What it allows you to do is build a naval airbase. These naval air bases are home to both ASW aircraft, which is a new type of aircraft. They also house fighter bombers and they house a few fighters. What they're especially good at, as the name indicates, is doing stuff against naval units, but that is not strictly their only use. The attack fighters that you can find on these bases are the same ones that you can find on carriers, and that means that you can just use them as bombers as well. Although, I mean, there's no B-52 or B-1B or B-2. These things have far shorter range, but nevertheless you can use them in an offensive role against ships. Let's have a look at some of these. I'm going to have 2 air bases backed up by 2 radar sites. And let's see, what else would I like? I don't really need a carrier. I don't really need nukes. Long wave radar would help, because it allows me to spot stuff earlier. Better shortwave radar. And then we need a few points to spend, so I'll go with 2 more radar sites and 1 bomb. I've eliminated Russia, Europe, South America and North America. For this test run I'm playing West Asia, and I'm doing that because it has quite a few neighboring nations which can come at you with ships. So let's have a look. Now, before I talk any further about the mod, keep in mind it's a mod, it's a work in progress, the game isn't fully out yet. Although, by the time that you're watching this, it very well might be. Anyway, this mod is probably subject to change. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if Tarsus is going to be joining us in the comment section, answering questions and listening to your suggestions. Alright, a naval airbase. What does it do? One thing that you need to know about these things, of course, you have the aircraft range, but what this picture doesn't quite tell you is what the radar coverage of these things is. What they are really good at is sonar. If I put it down, let's see, where are they likely to come from? Here. This is the sonar range that these bases have. Right there. Let me turn off the long wave radar. They have a really good sonar range, and that's just the range of the base itself. What they don't really have a great range of is radar. A standard radar site is better. It is just flat out better. So try to make sure that you have a radar site close to the naval airbase to augment its capabilities. I'm going to put one over there. And I'll put... they're not that likely to use submarines here. I'll put the other one over here. This sonar range might tempt you to put it very close to the shore, as it does me. The problem with that particular approach is that this works both ways. You either detect the submarine or you engage the enemy naval units, destroyers, cruisers, aircraft carriers, whatever you find, or they kill you, because you are so close to the ocean. Now, sure enough, upgraded destroyers and cruisers are even more of a threat and will find you even if you deploy these things farther land inwards. So if you want to deploy it, let's say, next to Baghdad, for some reason you can, but that kind of negates the advantage that these things give you as far as sonar goes. Now, what sort of aircraft do they spawn with? They have the attack bomber, just your standard attack bomber that you can also find on a carrier. They come with 6 fighters and anti-submarine warfare aircraft. Now, the game doesn't quite do the weapon system justice, because these things actually have more. If I deploy one, I can show you what they have, and in the meanwhile I'll queue up some research that's going to be useful to make these things even better. I want advanced aircraft to make sure that I have advanced attack bombers, and once that is done, I'm also going to queue up... I'm going to queue up ASMs, air-to-surface missiles, because once I have these 2 technologies, I'm going to have F-18s, which are launched from my air bases, from my naval air bases to be exact, and my fighters, which are more effective in either of the role, either as a fighter or an attack bomber, and they'll be able to target enemy shipping. Now then, the start here is less than opportune. because we immediately happen to spawn next to the carrier group from Africa. That sucks. That's not a great start, because it means that I'll very rapidly get that asset destroyed. So be it. Immediately, of course, we have our own attack bombers, which are going out to meet the destroyer, but they'll be quickly tackled by the fighters, which are coming out of the aircraft carrier. What I want to talk about, however, is the anti-submarine warfare aircraft. This thing has a range of 18,000. It can traverse very, very far. I can have this thing take off over here. It can just scout out all the way over South America and North America, and then come back. That's how far these things can go. Weapon-wise, they come with 3 weapon sets. You have depth charges, very effective against submarines. They come with torpedoes. This means that they're effective against submarines with torpedoes as well, but they can also use these against destroyers. And then they got the Slam ER, or the Slammer. This is a new weapon system. It was added specifically by this mod. And if I'm not mistaken, it's all the way down here. No. No, sorry, it got upgraded by the weapon systems here. The cruise missiles. The cruise missiles now also update this Slam ER. Do they get any bonuses? Yes. Maneuvering missiles upgrades the Slam ER. This upgrades the Slam ER to a cruise missile, hypersonic missile. And I think that's the most important upgrades that you can get for these things. You can use those to take out a radar site, take out something small. I'm going to try it against an airbase, but my chances of actually getting a kill are pretty negligible because I think my aircraft won't survive. There we go. The Slam ER are on the way. Range is really good. 950. But the damage is probably negligible. There goes my radar sight. There we go. That really wasn't very good. That would have been enough to destroy a radar site. So that's the trade-off. Now, in order to resupply these, you're going to have to go back to base, as with all weapon systems. Considering that this fight's probably not going to go well, I'm just going to let it play out and instead focus on the naval base over here. What these naval aircraft can also do is scout for submarines. They have a sonar range of 400, they have an APY, which I believe is a longer range radar of 500, and a short range radar of 350. So between those various systems, you can be a pretty effective platform. One thing, and it's the same thing I need for AWACS aircraft, is the ability to patrol. I want to set multiple waypoints, and I want this aircraft to go from here to there and just continue back and forth. Because that way, you have an actual patrol aircraft. If they just do this, if they just fly either circles or 8s or whatever, they're not that useful to me. They're not that effective. So ideally, I would see these things patrol back and forth. And I really hope that that's going to be a feature that they will implement later in the game. Now, to make matters more complex for my naval airbase, I also have an aircraft carrier from these guys here. So this base is probably also quite quickly going to fall. What I will do is send out these guys against the destroyer, just to see how effective the Slam ER is. I'm not sure how much damage it will do. I just know that these destroyers aren't armed with SAMs yet. That did nothing. Not a scratch on them. And here? Yeah. Don't use them against units. They're not good for that capacity. Now, what else do you use a naval airbase for? Resupplying your aircraft carriers. Because this way, you can already have a position, and this is really nice, you can have a position from where you can have an attack bomber launch. Normally, if you have an aircraft carrier, it's going into battle, it loses a couple of fighters, maybe a couple of attack bombers, and in order to resupply it, you have to bring the aircraft carrier all the way back into your waters. That takes time. Time that you maybe not, well, you might not have it. You can use these as a stepping stone. Let's say I have an aircraft carrier over here. The aircraft carrier is doing air patrols and doing strikes on the Pacific. While doing that, it loses a couple of attack bombers. Casualties of war. So what you can then do is have these guys. You click on them, you click on the aircraft carrier, and that's where they're going to land. Yes, it's a point of no return to base, but they can make that trip one way. If they find an aircraft carrier there where they can land on, they're fine because they can resupply there. So whereas normally, if I have an aircraft carrier that's either empty or near empty, I would have to send it back. You can now use these things to do skipping stones, to just serve as a base where you plunk down your new attack bombers, and then the attack bomber flies all the way over and make sure that the aircraft carrier gets resupplied. Now, the one thing that I want to show you is submarines. So let's find a situation where I find a submarine and I can take that down with a patrol aircraft. Now, while I was going for a situation where I was looking to attack a submarine, the enemy aircraft carrier group from East Asia happened to wander by, and this airbase can now also show its role as a very effective anti-shipping platform. Because these attack fighters are now armed with air-to-surface missiles. This aircraft carrier group, the poor guys, don't have an upgrade yet to their SAMs. They don't have that yet. The aircraft carrier itself has already had a bit of a skirmish with the aircraft carrier group from Africa, so both aircraft carriers are exhausted. What the airbase is currently doing is auto-engaging, so it's automatically targeting the aircraft, the ships using the aircraft. That's one way to do it, but the alternative way to do it is to use a naval airbase attack plan. I can have these guys go after the destroyers, the cruisers. Those are pretty much the most important targets. I don't even need to synchronize my attack. I just need to execute it right now. And I can immediately go after them. One problem, these guys don't have the range to go after the guys over here. The other aircraft does. Be very careful that this thing, the anti-submarine aircraft, does not get wasted like this. This is why, for this particular mod in the current situation, I'm a little hesitant to recommend the strike plan. Because yes, it works, but those maritime patrol aircraft are, well, they're not throwaway aircraft. They take 37 seconds to build, and if you have to keep thinking of building these, it just adds up. It's not something that you really want to do. So, I would recommend not using a strike plan, at least not that much. And just making sure that you have the aircraft go after targets as they see fit. Or, potentially, to limit the range of the attack plan. Because I know that the range of the attack bomber is 5,000 meters, or 5,000... Well, 5,000 meters would not be very far. 5,000 kilometers. If I change the attack plan to have a max range of 5,000 kilometers... Fine, 4,900. Then I wonder what they're going to use.
Executing strike plan.
Nope. The maritime patrol aircraft, anti-submarine warfare aircraft, is still looking to take down targets over here. Interestingly. Even though I set a range limit. Even though these guys have been told, no, you cannot go that far. Apparently, this one doesn't care. I can tell it to just abort, but it'll probably get sent out once again. So, Naval Airbase, very useful against Navy units, of course. Now, why would you use one of these instead of just a standard airbase? You might not want to lose your bombers. Your bombers have far more range, they carry far more missiles, but you might already have your bombers from an airbase set up to do a different job. Go after a different target, be in a different strike plan. So that's when the Naval Airbase comes in very, very handy. Now, Tarsus did mention that in order to make room for the Naval Airbase, he had to take out, I believe, the submarine command, or the submarine attack slot. So that's something that gets sacrificed, but maybe later, when the game matures more, we'll be able to see abilities where you can just add more and more units. And yes, the SSBNs are still there, but the standard submarines with their cruise missiles are not. A little while later, I have found an enemy radar installation. This is what the Slammer missile was originally designed, at least by Tarsus, to do. Take out radar sites. It's an opportunistic weapon. You don't use it against any kind of land-based... Well, maybe a land-based weapon system like a mobile missile launcher would work. But a silo, no. An airbase, hell no, because you're getting into range of the fighters. And overall, as we have seen, a destroyer, not recommended. Next up, and this is the problem with submarines. Finding them. Hence the request for the patrol option. Over here we finally have found a submarine from the Pacific, and this poor bugger is good as dead. Most of the time, of course, submarines will be submerged. If they're surfaced, then an AWACS aircraft can immediately pick them up. Once they're submerged, you're going to have to do a lot of searching. And that's what these aircraft have the sonar for. Now, yes, submarines also have sonar, destroyers also have sonar, but they don't travel at a speed of 400. So that is where these aircraft come in really useful. I have slightly upgraded the torpedoes so that they have slightly more range, but outside of that, the depth charges are unchanged. This guy has nowhere to run, and this just goes to highlight how deadly anti-submarine warfare aircraft are. Oh, there's 2 of them even. Those were 2 torpedoes and 2 depth charges for good measure. Hits. And that's 1 guy dead. Turning around, dropping the torpedoes, dropping 2 more depth charges. And that's the second submarine dead. That took very little work. The only part of work that it took was actually finding the submarine. That's really the most work that you have. Outside of that, it's, well, click and kill. Because the subs have nowhere to go. I think this is a really promising mod. I like it. It has, and I agree with Tarsus over here, he says it has the most vanilla feel to it. And I agree. It's not overly powerful, it's not game-breaking, it's not something that would, let's say, not be a normal part of the standard game. So I think that this is a mod that can just be added to games without really any need where people start shouting, oh, this is massively OP. No. A naval patrol aircraft will do a number on a submarine. It's that simple. It will just win. That's what it was designed to do. A second reason why I find these things not to be overpowered, because the anti-submarine aircraft are very easy to kill. They don't have any kind of potency against other targets. Sure, early on you can attack a destroyer if you really want to. Not so much with the SLAM, but you can do it with the torpedo. The moment that somebody researches a SAM site or SAM technology, you're screwed. Fly into range with your expensive anti-submarine warfare aircraft against a DD and you're dead. Don't do it. Fly against an aircraft carrier and you're dead. They're not supposed to go there. They're supposed to do pretty much this. Patrol longer stretches. Find submarines and remote targets. Maybe, and this is more late game, try and find SSBNs. Or the moment that an SSBN has been detected and, well, you don't quite have an aircraft nearby, you don't quite have a submarine that can hunt it down or a destroyer that you can quickly send, that's when you send one of these things in. And these will very quickly make work of that ICBM launching sub, or, well, in that case, SLBM. Because they are very destructive if left alone, SSBNs. So, that's an overview of the Naval Airbase and ASW Aircraft mod. Link in the description as to where you can find the mod on the workshop. It is as simple as subscribing and the mod immediately gets installed and activated. Just make sure the rest of your buddies also have the mod, because I don't know what happens if you install the mod and your buddy doesn't and you end up in the game together. Anyway, that's it for me. If you have any questions, post those in the comment section, and there's a very high likelihood that you'll get an answer from Tarsus himself. Thank you for watching, I hope you found it useful, and I'll catch you soon for the next video.